All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Kell Brook calls out Keith Thurman in response to something Keith Thurman said about him. Man, please let this fight take place whenever boxing really comes back. Let's talk about what Kell Brook had to say and what Keith Thurman had to say in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So if you guys can go back and think back to, when was it? Maybe 2016, 2017 time frame. Whenever it was that, 2016 time frame, because it was in 2017 that Kell Brook lost to Errol Spence Jr. lost his belt. But before that point in time, one of the best fights that could have been made in the welterweight division was a matchup between the then WBA welterweight champion Keith Thurman and the IBF welterweight champion Kell Brook. But unfortunately, that fight did not happen. I think that had a lot to I'd have to go back and do my research, but I think probably had something to do with Keith Thurman. Because I don't think Kell Brook would have ever been scared of that fight. And in fact, I think that Kell Brook went up to fight Gennady Golovkin because he really didn't have an opportunity for a mega fight at 147 pounds. But then again, you got to go back, as with all things like this, you got to go back and read the news articles, go look at the videos, look what, excuse me, people were saying to place the specific blame on why the fight didn't happen. But at that time, that would have been a mega fight in the welterweight division, and a unification fight again between the IBF belt and the WBC belt. But unfortunately, things didn't go that way. The two top dogs at the welterweight division at that time, both went separate ways. One went the back-to-back loss way with going up in a fight that was ill-advised against Gennady Golovkin at middleweight. One where Kell Brook really did look during the early rounds before Gennady Golovkin started catching up to him, really did look very skilled. He looked like he was winning the fight, was giving Gennady Golovkin problems. But, Gennady Golovkin being a guy that, is a solid 160 pounder and one of the bigger punches at 160 pounds, that two-weight division jump for Kell Brook just wound up being too much for him. And so then he comes back down to 147 and he meets a buzzsaw in Errol Spence Jr. So, pop goes the weasel on that. Keith Thurman, kind of the same thing happened. It wasn't necessarily a loss. It was his injuries. He actually goes on after he wins the WBA to unify with the and when I do believe it was a vacant WBC belt with Danny Garcia, or actually, no, I think he might have beaten Danny Garcia for the WBC title and then became a unified, with the WBA and the WBA and the WBC belt, right? So then he was on top of the welterweight division, but then he winds up injuring everything on his body, right? From car accidents to, hand injuries. And he winds up going through all of 2018 and almost all of 2000, most of 2017 and almost all of 2018. I think he eventually came back in 2019. By that time, the matchup between him and Kell Brook was, something that people weren't really talking about. But now Keith Thurman had said that who he wants to fight. Now that he's coming back off of his loss to Manny Pacquiao, he said that he pretty much wants to fight everybody in the welterweight division. Except for the guy with the WB no belt, which would be Terrence Crawford. Man, I'm telling you, man, Keith Thurman sometimes, you can say what you want to say about that year layoff and what kind of fighter he is and all that stuff, but the guy is comedic gold from time to time, man. He really is a very, very funny guy. So anyway, he said that he's not interested in that WB no belt. So with the exception of Terrence Crawford, he mentioned Errol Spence Jr. He said he wants a fight with Manny Pacquiao. He wants that rematch with Manny Pacquiao, and he mentioned Kell Brook. So yesterday on Twitter, Kell Brook said, "Hey man, I heard that you were talking about me. Let's make it happen." I cannot think of a better fight for Keith Thurman and Kell Brook than the fight with each other, because they're both at a crossroads, and they're both being looked at in a very similar fashion in boxing, that they are no longer the top in the welterweight division, and honestly, they're being treated like they're no longer top fighters at all. Kell Brook has not suffered a loss since 2017 when he lost to Errol Spence Jr., but in, I guess, maybe one performance, and I can't remember which one, he looked a little bit, I wouldn't say questionable. It just seemed like he just wasn't very motivated for the fight, and he winds up beating the guy, but it wasn't, a really spectacular, really wasn't a spectacular performance, but still a very, very solid. I mean, the guy won the fight. He hasn't lost since. Nobody has really been able to test him. I think Kell Brook's major problem is that he's an in-between type of guy, right? That he has right now, that he's probably a little too heavy for 147 pounds, but yet he's too small for 154 pounds. I think the same thing of Keith Thurman. He is probably, because of the amount of time that he was taken off, the amount of time that he took off, and the fact that he had to spend so much time getting his weight down, that he still might have a little bit of that problem, and definitely would have a high likelihood that he'll have that weight problem if these fights don't come back until 2021, because that would have meant that 3 of the last 4 years of Keith Thurman's boxing career, he's been inactive. 2 because of injury, and 1 because of Corona and the fact that, or COVID, and the fact that everything got shut down. But so the combination of those two, both of those guys are in very, very similar circumstances. And I think that an excellent fight between the two of those guys really could ignite their career. And I think that it is probably something that should be made as like a title eliminator for the WBA, or I would say a title eliminator for the WBC, but the WBC is so full of shiznit that I don't want to, I mean, it's like, God, dog. I think they're just waiting. I think the WBC is waiting for Jose Ramirez and Josh Taylor to get up there so they can play, so that they can get the WBC and they can immediately be franchise champions. Man, the WBC is on my nerves. But anyway, you get my point, that one of those sanctioning bodies, I think that would be a great title eliminator for a shot at the title, besides the WBO. But the IBF, I think it'd be a really good fight for the IBF. The only problem, I guess there's a problem though with the IBF at the 147 pounds, because they have that rehydration clause for the IBF. And I think that might have been one of the main reasons that Kell Brook was having problems at 147, is because he was the IBF champion. And when you have, you can go down to 147 the day of the weigh-in, but you still have to be at 157 the morning of the fight, which I think, for somebody like Kell Brook, who is definitely a very muscular guy and a big welterweight, I think that could cause, some problems for him. But, the WBA, yeah, so I guess it probably would be the best thing would probably be the WBA. But if you have a WBA interim title for that, or a WBC, or a WBC title eliminator between the two of them, which the WBC more than likely would take, dude, that would be a great fight, man. That would be great for both of them, because it puts them both in position. If one beat the other, it will immediately elevate the other guy to back into the top tier of welterweights. Because right now, both of them, Kell Brook, I think a lot because it's harder for him to make the weight, and for Keith Thurman, because he's fresh off of a loss to Manny Pacquiao, they're not really being perceived as the top welterweights. But the fight between the two of them, I think, would get one of those guys up there. And more importantly than that, it will be an excellent, excellent fight, because both of these guys are master boxers. Both of them carry, a good amount of pop in their hands, and they're both very strong, both former champions, veterans in the game, both have very solid name recognition. And I think a lot of people would get very, very much behind that fight. And I think it's probably one of the best fights that can be made at 147 pounds, that does not include Errol Spence Jr. or Terrence Crawford. Yeah, I think that's safe to say. I think it's one of the best fights that can be made that do not include the name Terrence Crawford or Errol Spence. I could say don't include Manny Pacquiao, but not necessarily, because I'm just, Manny Pacquiao is going to, this year in 2020, is not going to touch the ring in 2020, right? And people need to get this through their head about the rest of boxing. But none of these major fighters are gonna more than likely, none of these major fighters are gonna touch a boxing ring this year. Thank goodness that they made a ton of money, last year, so they and over the years that they can get themselves through it. But I don't see, with the fact that there is no vaccine for COVID, there is no ability to have large crowds in any of the states in the United States, that there being problems getting back and forth out of countries. I just don't see I don't see it happening. So what you are going to have with a guy like Manny Pacquiao is, now he would have gone through an entire year inactive, coming back at the age, not of 42 now, but now he's almost 43 years old, coming in there against any of these top guys. Dude, Manny Pacquiao more than likely is going to lose. But anyway, that's my take on the situation. I certainly hope I get to see this fight. You let me know what you think in the comment section. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you to everybody that's a member of the Patreon channel, everybody that's a member of the channel, of the YouTube channel, everybody that supports as a channel member, and the super chats and the cash apps that we get through in the live streams. You guys really make it move. With that, I'm out. Peace.